The Powerful Approach to Every Problem by Cherry. Introduction. The hidden power in every problem. What if the problem isn't the problem, but the way we see it? Have you ever noticed how the same kind of problem seems to show up over and over again, just in a different disguise? Maybe it's a job that leaves you burned out, only to be replaced by another that does the same. Or a relationship that feels distant, frustrating, familiar. Or maybe it's not an external pattern, but an internal one. Self-doubt, anxiety, a creeping fear that no matter what you do, you're still not enough. Most of us are taught to deal with problems the same way we deal with a mess on the floor: clean it up quickly and move on. Put a bandage over it. Change jobs. Start a new relationship. Take a vacation. Push harder. Distract ourselves. Hope it goes away. And for a little while, it seems like it works. Until it doesn't. Until the same feeling, the same discomfort, the same pattern returns, and we're back where we started, wondering, why does this keep happening to me? That question, when asked honestly, is the beginning of real change. It's the invitation to stop reacting and start reflecting, to stop fixing symptoms and start understanding causes. And that's what this book is all about. Because here's a truth most people never learn. Every problem we face holds a hidden power, the power to transform us. But only if we're willing to go beneath the surface and look at what's really going on. Seeing problems differently. We live in a culture that treats problems like enemies. Something to defeat. Something to escape. Something that shouldn't be happening if we were doing life right. But what if we've misunderstood the very nature of problems? What if problems aren't interruptions but instructions? What if they're not punishments but teachers? What if the discomfort we try so hard to avoid is actually the very thing trying to wake us up? This book is an exploration of that idea, and an invitation to reframe the way you approach challenges in your life. Whether you're facing emotional pain, life transitions, patterns you can't seem to break, or just that nagging feeling that something's off, this is your roadmap to finding clarity, truth, and peace by looking for the root cause of the problem, rather than just treating its symptoms. A different kind of self-help. This isn't a quick fix kind of book. It's not about changing your life in 7 days or mastering your mind overnight. The truth is, transformation doesn't come from speed. It comes from depth. And to go deep, we need to slow down, pay attention, and get honest. We need to move past the surface-level answers and really sit with the questions that scare us. Questions like, why does this keep happening to me? What am I not seeing clearly? What part of me is creating or allowing this? What truth have I been avoiding? That's not easy work, but it's powerful work. And once you begin to do it, everything starts to shift. You stop feeling like a victim of your life and start stepping into the role of an active participant. You begin to see connections you hadn't noticed before. You develop compassion for yourself. You learn to listen more deeply, not just to others, but to the quiet wisdom within. Life at the root. At the heart of this book is a simple philosophy. Lasting change begins at the root. In the same way, a tree with diseased roots will keep producing sick leaves no matter how many times you trim the branches. A life that isn't examined at its foundation will keep producing the same kinds of problems. We can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. We have to go deeper. We have to look at our beliefs, our patterns, our pain. We have to ask hard questions about where those things came from and whether they still serve us. We have to become detectives in our own lives, not in a harsh, judgmental way, but with curiosity, kindness, and courage. Because here's the truth. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You are not failing. You're just responding to an inner script you didn't consciously choose. And once you start to uncover that script, once you start to understand what's underneath the problem, you gain the power to change it. That's where freedom begins. The power of root cause thinking. In business, medicine, and science, there's a method called root cause analysis. It's a process used to figure out the origin of a problem, rather than just treating the symptoms. If a machine breaks down, a mechanic doesn't just patch it up and hope for the best. They investigate. They ask why. They look for the source. What if we applied that same level of curiosity and commitment to our emotional and personal lives? What if, instead of just trying to feel better, we got brave enough to ask, why do I feel this way in the first place? What's really going on underneath this frustration, sadness, anger, or confusion? When we begin asking these questions, something remarkable happens. We stop spinning in circles, and we start moving forward, intentionally, not reactively. We stop blaming and start understanding. We stop resisting and start learning. We stop fearing the problem and start listening to it. Why we avoid the root. Now, let's be real. If getting to the root of a problem were easy, everyone would do it. But most of us have been taught, directly or indirectly, that certain truths are too painful to look at. We are afraid of what we'll find if we dig deep. So we stay on the surface. We become masters of coping. We learn to tolerate discomfort instead of transforming it. We keep ourselves busy, distracted, numb, or in control because going inward feels scary. And that's okay. That fear is valid. It comes from somewhere real. But here's the secret. What we fear facing is rarely as terrifying as we imagine. In fact, most of the time, it's not a monster in the basement. It's a younger version of us, still holding on to pain, still waiting to be heard. The deeper truth is this. Facing the root doesn't break you. It frees you. It gives you clarity. It gives you choice. It gives you your power back. And that's the kind of power we'll explore together in this book. What this book will offer you. Throughout this journey, you'll be guided through a series of reflections, tools, stories, and insights to help you approach your challenges with more clarity, honesty, and compassion. Each chapter will focus on a core principle of root cause living, from recognizing emotional patterns, to building resilience, to letting go of control. You'll learn to ask better questions, hear your own truth more clearly, and make decisions from a place of grounded self-awareness, rather than fear or reaction. You'll also hear stories, some from my own life, and some from others because there is healing in shared experience. You'll see how universal our struggles are, even when the details are different. You'll be reminded that you are not alone. And most importantly, you'll walk away with a new approach, not just to problems, but to life. The core themes you'll explore. This book is anchored in a few essential themes that will weave through each chapter like threads in a tapestry. These include root cause awareness, looking beneath the surface to understand what's really driving your challenges. Resilience, not just bouncing back, but growing stronger and wiser through adversity. Emotional intelligence, developing the skill of noticing, naming, and navigating your inner world with compassion. Mindset shifts, learning to reframe the way you see problems, pain, and even failure. Self-responsibility, reclaiming your role in your own life, not with guilt, but with empowerment. Letting go, understanding when to surrender control and trust the process. Self-discovery, using problems as a portal into deeper self-awareness and meaning. These themes will not be delivered as lectures but as conversations. This isn't a book written from a pedestal. It's written from the floor where life happens. It's honest, raw, and human. A dialogue, not a monologue. As you read, I want you to feel like we're talking. Like we're sitting across from each other in a quiet room, maybe with a cup of tea. Having one of those rare and beautiful conversations where the masks come off and the truth comes out. I'll share what I've learned, not as an expert with all the answers, but as someone who's walked through enough darkness to know where the light begins. You'll be invited to reflect, to pause, to feel. Each chapter will end with simple, clear takeaways and prompts, so you can apply what you've read in real time. This is not about collecting more knowledge. It's about building more awareness, living with more intention, learning how to sit with your life messy as it is and say, okay, let's begin here. One last thing before we begin. If you're holding this book, chances are you're facing something right now. Maybe it's uncertainty. Maybe it's pain. Maybe it's a problem that feels too big to solve. I want you to know something. That problem doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're being called to look deeper, to get honest, to grow in ways you haven't yet imagined. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to begin. So let's begin. Together. Let's look for the root. Let's find the hidden power in every problem. Let's rewrite the story one truth at a time. Chapter 1. The nature of problems. What are we really facing? Every problem is a messenger. But are we listening or just trying to silence it? There's a moment in every problem where we feel the urge to escape. Sometimes it's immediate, a gut-level reaction. This shouldn't be happening. Other times it's slower, more subtle. We start scrolling, working late, rationalizing, reaching for comfort or control. And before we even realize it, we're treating the problem like an invader, not a signal, a nuisance, not a message. But what if every problem was actually a conversation starter? What if the frustration, the discomfort, the confusion you're feeling right now isn't trying to punish you, but wake you up? It's so easy to mislabel what we're experiencing. A bad day becomes a bad life. A conflict becomes a reason to cut someone off. A restless feeling becomes a reason to quit your job, or move cities, or start over completely. And sometimes, those choices are right. Sometimes walking away is healthy. But more often than we realize, we don't actually want to change our lives. We just want to stop feeling what we're feeling. And so we make the problem the enemy. We try to silence the discomfort, instead of listening to what it's trying to say. But here's the truth. Problems are rarely what they seem on the surface. We feel the symptom, not the source. Think about the last time you felt completely stuck, frustrated, overwhelmed, maybe even hopeless. What was the situation? A relationship? A job? A personal decision you couldn't make? Now think about what you told yourself was wrong. I just hate my job. I can't deal with this person anymore. Nothing I do is ever enough. These are common narratives. Understandable ones. But here's the thing. They're also incomplete. Most of us confuse the symptom for the source. We say the job is the problem, but maybe it's actually that we've outgrown it, and staying feels like self-betrayal. We say the relationship is the issue, but maybe we've never fully spoken our truth, and resentment has built silently for years. We say we're overwhelmed, but maybe we've been avoiding necessary boundaries for far too long. The surface shows us where the pain is, but the root reveals why it's there. This chapter is about slowing down and learning how to tell the difference. It's about beginning to ask better questions, not just to solve the problem, but to understand it, to hear the message within the mess. A personal story. The job that broke me and the truth that saved me. Years ago, I found myself in a job that looked good on paper, but felt completely wrong in my soul. It paid well. It had structure. It had respectability. But every morning, I woke up with this weight in my chest. I felt disconnected, frustrated, bored. On paper, everything was fine. but inside I was crumbling. At first, I did what most of us do. I blamed the circumstances, the leadership style, the hours, the workload, the lack of creativity. I changed teams, took on different projects, even tried switching roles, but nothing helped. I told myself I had a job problem, but the truth, I had a purpose problem. I had a courage problem. I had a truth I wasn't willing to admit. I didn't want to be there at all. I wanted to do work that felt real, that lit me up, that aligned with something deeper. But the idea of leaving felt terrifying. I had responsibilities, a reputation, a resume, and so I stayed. And I suffered. It wasn't until I finally asked the deeper question, what is this pain trying to tell me, that I realized the job wasn't the root. My fear of change was. I wasn't dissatisfied because the work was hard. I was dissatisfied because I was living someone else's version of success. I wasn't burned out from working too much. I was burned out from betraying myself. That truth hurt to admit, but it also set me free. Eventually, I left. Not in a blaze of glory. Quietly. Slowly. With care. And I didn't leap into a dream career overnight. But I started moving towards something that felt true. I started listening, not just to my discomfort, but to the message beneath it. That moment of clarity changed everything. It's what birthed the work I do now. It's what led me to write these words today. Problems as reflections, not punishments. We tend to think problems are signs we're doing something wrong. But often, they're signs that something isn't aligned. That we're not listening to ourselves. That we're making choices from fear instead of truth. The discomfort you feel is not a punishment, it's a signal. It's your inner wisdom knocking, gently at first, then louder and louder, asking you to pay attention. If you listen closely, every problem is trying to tell you something. You're ignoring a part of yourself. You're betraying a boundary you need. You've been pretending this doesn't matter to you, but it does. It's time to grow even if it's scary. But we can't hear those messages if we're too busy trying to fix, numb, or run. That's why awareness, honest, conscious awareness is the first and most important step. Becoming conscious of what we're really feeling. So how do we stop mislabeling our problems? How do we learn to listen instead of silence? We begin by noticing our reactions. The next time something frustrates you, pause. Before you fix it, vent about it, or blame someone for it, ask, what emotion is actually coming up for me? What story am I telling myself about this? What might be underneath the reaction I'm having? Have I felt this before in a different situation? These questions are powerful not because they give you instant answers, but because they open the door to real awareness. The goal isn't to judge yourself. The goal is to get curious. Because when you look at your life through a lens of curiosity rather than criticism, everything changes. You start seeing your pain as a guide, your frustration as feedback, your discomfort as an invitation, not a defect. Why it matters. When we only ever deal with the surface of our problems, we keep cycling through the same patterns. We leave one job only to hate the next. We break up with one partner and recreate the same dynamic with another. We jump into a new routine or mindset, only to crash and burn a few months later. Why? Because the root is still untouched. And until the root changes, the pattern continues. But when you start to look beneath the surface, something opens up. You begin to understand yourself. You stop reacting and start choosing. You stop avoiding discomfort and start learning from it. That's where growth lives. Not in avoiding problems, but in learning to read them, to feel them, to let them teach you what you haven't yet learned. Chapter summary. Key takeaways. Problems often reflect deeper truths. What we call the problem is often just the surface expression of something deeper within us. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's information. The feelings we try to avoid are often trying to guide us towards something important. Ask better questions. Instead of rushing to fix the issue, slow down and ask, what is this problem trying to tell me? Surface solutions create recurring problems. Lasting change begins when we look at the root cause, not just the immediate symptom. Awareness is the first step. The more conscious we become of our emotional responses and inner narratives, the more clearly we can see the truth. Reflective prompt. What's one recurring problem in your life? And what might be beneath it? Take a few minutes to write freely. Don't censor yourself. Be honest even if the truth is messy. What's the deeper story behind this pattern? What emotion comes up when you think about it? What would happen if you stopped trying to solve it and started listening to it instead? Chapter 2. Root cause thinking. The lens of clarity. Most of us want solutions, but few of us want to dig. We live in a world that rewards quick fixes. Your phone lags? Restart it. You feel low? Scroll for dopamine. You're overwhelmed? Book a trip. You're stuck in a cycle? Rebrand it as a fresh start. Don't get me wrong, short-term relief has its place. There's nothing wrong with hitting pause when things feel heavy. But let's be honest, a lot of what we call solutions are just bandages. And while bandages help us get through the day, they don't actually heal the wound underneath. That's why the same problem keeps returning in new clothes. It may look different, a new partner, a new job, a new city, but deep down, it feels the same. That's not bad luck. That's the universe and your inner wisdom pointing out something important. We're not getting to the root. And until we do, no matter how often we rearrange the surface, we'll keep coming back to the same place. The difference between solving and understanding. There's a difference between solving a problem and understanding a problem. Solving is what we reach for when we're uncomfortable. We want it fixed. Now, we want the pain to go away, the confusion to lift, the answer to appear. Understanding, on the other hand, asks us to pause, to sit with the discomfort, to get curious instead of reactive, to ask questions like, why is this showing up in my life? Where have I felt this before? What part of me is being triggered? What's the deeper pattern underneath this pain? This chapter is about that second approach, the deeper, more uncomfortable, but ultimately more freeing one. It's about learning to see your problems not as random events or failures, but as clues, maps, invitations, messages with a root. What is root cause thinking? In industries like engineering, manufacturing, and medicine, there's a concept called root cause analysis. It's a systematic process used to find the origin of a problem, not just the symptom. If a car keeps breaking down, you don't just keep replacing the same part. You trace the malfunction back to its source. If a patient keeps getting the same infection, doctors don't just prescribe antibiotics over and over. They start asking what's creating the vulnerability. Now imagine applying that same logic to your personal and emotional life. What if you traced your stress, anxiety, patterns, and pain back to their root? What if you stopped treating every new problem as a standalone crisis and started asking, where have I felt this before? What's underneath this pattern? That's root cause thinking. It's not always easy, but it's always illuminating. Why surface solutions fail and why they're so tempting. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Surface-level problems often have emotional roots, and emotional roots are vulnerable to touch. That's why most of us stop at the surface. It feels safer. We say we're overworked, but the root might be that we don't believe we have worth outside of productivity. We say we're afraid of failure, but the root might be shame that was planted in childhood. We say we can't commit, but the root might be a fear of abandonment that we never healed. We say we're just bad with money, but the root might be a belief that we don't deserve abundance. It's so much easier to treat the symptoms than it is to explore the story underneath them. But here's the trade-off. Surface solutions offer comfort. Root cause thinking offers freedom. One soothes the moment. The other changes your life. The 5 whys. A tool for tracing back. One simple but powerful way to begin applying root cause thinking is a technique called the 5 whys. It's used in process improvement work, but it's incredibly helpful in emotional healing too. Here's how it works. You ask yourself why something is happening, and then ask why again to the answer you get. Do this at least 5 times, and you'll often uncover a belief, wound, or pattern at the core. Let's look at an example. Problem. I feel stuck in my career. 1. Why? Because I don't feel excited about my work anymore. 2. Why? Because it doesn't feel meaningful. 3. Why? Because I've always chosen stability over purpose. 4. Why? Because I was taught that success means security. 5. Why? Because growing up we didn't have much and I believed that taking risks was irresponsible. Now you're not just dealing with job dissatisfaction. You're working with a core belief about safety and worth. See the difference? When we ask better questions, we get to the real issue and we give ourselves the chance to create real change. Personal story. The chaos that wasn't about chaos. I'll never forget a period in my life where everything felt chaotic. I was constantly overwhelmed. I couldn't keep up with anything: emails, schedules, social plans, even small errands. My home was a mess. My thoughts were scattered. I felt like I was drowning in noise and demand. I kept saying, life is too chaotic. I just need things to calm down. So I did what most people do. I bought a new planner. I made color-coded to-do lists. I rearranged my home office. I decluttered my inbox. And for a week or 2, it helped. But the feeling came back. Stronger. Eventually, I sat down and did the hard thing. I asked myself, what is this chaos really about? It took time, honesty, tears, and here's what I uncovered. The chaos wasn't around me, it was within me. I had unresolved grief I wasn't facing. I had deep-seated perfectionism that made everything feel urgent and heavy. I had been overcommitting to prove my worth. I was afraid of stillness because stillness meant sitting with emotions I didn't want to feel. The disorganization outside of me was mirroring the fragmentation inside of me. That realization changed everything. Once I saw the root, I could stop trying to organize my life into submission and start healing the wound that was fueling the chaos. That's the power of root cause thinking. It cuts through noise. It bypasses blame. It gives you your agency back. What root cause thinking requires? Let's be clear, this kind of work takes courage. It asks you to slow down in a world that rushes you. It asks you to feel in a culture that numbs. It asks you to look inward when it would be easier to point fingers outward. But what it gives you in return is clarity. And clarity is power. Root cause work requires a few key qualities. Honesty. You must be willing to tell the truth to yourself even if it's uncomfortable. Curiosity. You're not judging yourself, you're investigating. Think like a compassionate detective. Patience. The answers don't always come quickly. Sometimes the truth arrives in layers. Compassion. What you find at the root might be an old wound, a misunderstood belief, or a younger version of yourself. Approach it with care, applying root cause thinking to different areas of life. This lens can be used anywhere you feel stuck or reactive. Let's explore a few examples. Relationships. Problem. I always feel like people don't respect me. Root cause exploration. Do I set clear boundaries? Do I allow people to violate them without consequence? Was I taught that speaking up makes me difficult? Do I fear being rejected if I assert myself? Self-worth. Problem. I never feel like I'm doing enough. Root cause exploration. What defines enough for me? Whose approval am I seeking? Where did I learn that productivity equals value? Anxiety. Problem. I'm always anxious about the future. Root cause exploration. What do I believe will happen if I don't stay in control? Have I experienced unexpected losses before? Do I trust myself to handle the unknown? These are the kinds of questions that lead you not just to relief, but to understanding, healing, and lasting change. How root cause thinking builds resilience. When you start seeing problems as patterns with a root, and not just random chaos, something shifts inside you. You stop panicking. You stop blaming. You stop collapsing under every difficulty. Instead, you start asking, what is this here to teach me? What have I not yet seen? What's my role in this pattern and what can I change? That's resilience, not just bouncing back, but bouncing back with insight. Coming out stronger, not because the problem didn't hurt, but because you allowed it to teach you. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of life and start becoming a student of it. Chapter summary. Key takeaways. Root cause thinking is about tracing a problem back to its origin, not just fixing the symptoms. Ask why. 5 times to uncover emotional patterns, core beliefs, or unhealed wounds driving your behavior. Surface solutions offer comfort, but root work offers freedom. Clarity leads to sustainable growth and change. Common roots include fear, shame, limiting beliefs, and past trauma. When these are seen and understood, transformation becomes possible. This approach builds resilience. The more deeply you understand your inner world, the more empowered you become in your outer world. Reflective prompt. What belief keeps you stuck in this problem? Think of a recurring problem in your life. Ask yourself, why does this keep happening? Keep going until you get to the deeper layer. What belief is fueling the pattern? Is it really true? Where did it come from? What would life feel like if that belief no longer held power over you? Write without judgment. This is about clarity, not critique. You may be surprised at what you find. In the next chapter, we'll explore why, even when we know there's a deeper truth waiting for us, we resist looking. We'll talk about fear, ego, and the human tendency to run from discomfort, even when it's the very key to our healing. Because knowing how to look for the root is one thing. Being willing to go there is another. Let's go there together. Chapter 3. Resistance to the root. Why we avoid the truth. We fear what we'll find in the dark. But it's where the light begins. There's a moment, just before the truth rises, when everything inside us wants to turn away. It doesn't matter how strong we are. It doesn't matter how many self-help books we've read, how many therapy sessions we've attended, or how aware we've become. When we start to get close to a painful truth, one that cuts deep into the identity we've built, or challenges the story we've told ourselves, we flinch. We look away. We distract ourselves. We intellectualize it, avoid it, over-explain it, minimize it. We find ways to stay just far enough from the edge of real change that we can feel like we're working on it, without actually having to face what's waiting for us at the root. And the truth is, that's not because we're lazy, broken, or weak. It's because resistance is a form of self-protection. It's because avoidance has kept us safe for a while. But if you're reading this book, chances are that safety has turned into a prison. The walls that once protected you are now the very things keeping you from yourself. This chapter is about understanding that resistance, naming it, respecting it, and gently, slowly learning how to move through it. We all have an edge. There's a term in psychology called the window of tolerance. It refers to the range of emotional intensity we can comfortably handle without shutting down, going numb, dissociating, avoiding, or spiraling out, becoming overwhelmed, panicked, reactive. When we approach something that pushes us past that window, like a deeply buried fear or painful memory, our nervous system says, too much, and we resist. It's not personal. It's biological. But emotional growth often requires us to sit just outside that window for a little while. Not so far that we re-traumatize ourselves, but far enough that we grow our capacity. Resistance is the body's way of saying, I'm scared. But growth is the soul's way of saying, you're ready. That tension is where transformation begins. Why we avoid the root? Let's break this down. Why do we avoid looking at the deeper causes of our struggles, even when we know they're there? Here are a few core reasons. 1. Fear of what we'll find. We often carry an unconscious belief that if we really look at what's underneath our pain, we'll find something unbearable, something shameful, weak, or broken. We're afraid that the truth will confirm our worst fears about ourselves. That what we usually find isn't darkness, it's wounding. It's unmet needs, old pain, parts of us that were never seen, held, or understood. The monster in the basement turns out to be a frightened child. And yet, fear is powerful. It convinces us the unknown is dangerous. So we stay where it feels familiar even if it also hurts. 2. The ego wants control. Our ego is the part of us that seeks control, order, identity. It wants to protect us by keeping things predictable, even if predictability means staying in cycles of pain. To the ego, awareness feels like a threat. If you admit that your relationship dynamic is toxic, what happens to the identity you've built around being the fixer? If you acknowledge that your career isn't aligned, what does that mean for the years you've invested? The ego resists truth because truth demands change, and change means losing control. 3. Avoidance as a survival strategy. For many of us, avoidance started as a brilliant coping mechanism. When we were young and couldn't process complex emotions or experiences, we learned to suppress them. We compartmentalized. We distracted. We got over it quickly because we had to. Those patterns become part of our emotional muscle memory. And even in adulthood, when we could face the truth, our system still defaults to avoidance, because that's what it knows. This isn't failure. This is survival. And the goal isn't to shame ourselves for avoiding the root. It's to outgrow the need for avoidance by creating enough safety to go deeper. A personal story. Burnout, denial, and the breakthrough that followed. Several years ago, I went through what I now recognize as a full-on burnout. But at the time, I wouldn't have called it that. I told myself I was just a little tired, that I needed to be more organized, that this was just a busy season, and things would calm down soon. I didn't want to admit I was burning out because that would mean confronting something much harder. I was attaching my self-worth to productivity. I was saying yes to everything because I was terrified of being irrelevant. I was running on fumes because slowing down meant facing the emptiness underneath all the doing. But I didn't know how to stop. I resisted the truth with everything I had. Until one morning, I woke up and couldn't stop crying. My body felt heavy. My mind was fogged. I had a full day of meetings ahead and I couldn't move. It was like my entire system finally said, enough. That was the moment the resistance cracked. I didn't have a dramatic realization or sudden breakthrough. What I had was a deep, quiet grief. Grief for all the ways I had ignored myself. Grief for how hard I'd worked just to be enough. And in that moment, I saw the truth I'd been avoiding. I didn't need rest. I needed healing. That truth hurt. But it also liberated me. It was the beginning of a whole new relationship with work, self-worth, and rest. But I couldn't get there until I stopped resisting. The hidden cost of avoidance. Avoidance gives us temporary relief but long-term suffering. It numbs us in the moment, but it keeps the wound open. And the more we avoid, the louder the problem becomes. Emotional pain has a way of demanding to be felt. If we don't listen when it whispers, it will start to shout. Eventually, it finds ways to express itself. Through chronic stress or illness, through breakdowns in relationships, through addictive behaviors, through depression, anxiety, burnout, through self-sabotage and repeating cycles. Avoidance doesn't make the problem go away, it just delays the healing. And the truth is, most of the time what we're avoiding is not even the pain itself, but the emotions connected to the pain. Shame, guilt, sadness, vulnerability. But here's the paradox. The only way out is through. The only way to break the cycle is to feel the very thing we've been running from. How to gently work with resistance. So how do we move through resistance without overwhelming ourselves? The key is to go slowly and with compassion. Here are a few practices to begin working with resistance in a gentle, sustainable way. 1. Name the resistance. Start by noticing when resistance shows up. It might look like procrastination, over-explaining, defensiveness, or even physical tension. Instead of judging it, try naming it. I notice I want to distract myself right now. I'm feeling a strong urge to avoid this conversation. This topic makes me feel uncomfortable. I wonder what's underneath that. Naming resistance breaks the spell. It brings it into awareness, where it can no longer run the show unconsciously. 2. Get curious, not critical. Instead of asking, "Why do I keep avoiding this?" which can sound like a scolding, try asking, "What is my resistance protecting me from? What am I afraid will happen if I face this? What part of me needs compassion right now?" Curiosity invites honesty. Criticism invites shutdown. 3. Go one layer at a time. You don't have to get to the root in one sitting. Emotional work is like peeling an onion layer by layer, tear by tear. You build trust with yourself over time. If something feels too big to face, break it down. What's one piece of this that I can sit with today? Even the smallest step counts. 4. Create safety for the truth. Resistance fades when safety grows. That means creating spaces internally and externally where your truth can exist without shame. That might mean journaling without judgment, speaking honestly with a trusted friend, working with a therapist, practicing self-talk that sounds like this. "It's okay to feel this. I'm allowed to go slow. Whatever I find inside myself, I can handle it." Healing doesn't require urgency. It requires safety. The reward of going deeper. What happens when we stop resisting and start facing what's underneath? We reclaim our power. We stop living in fear of our own emotions. We stop letting avoidance drive our decisions. We begin to heal, not just cope. We also discover something unexpected. The truth isn't as scary as we thought. In fact, it often comes with relief. Telling the truth, admitting burnout, acknowledging grief, naming a toxic pattern can feel like taking a deep breath after years of holding it in. You don't have to fix everything all at once. You just have to stop pretending it's not there. That honesty alone is healing. Chapter summary. Key takeaways. Avoidance deepens problems. What we don't face doesn't go away, it festers, grows, and shows up in different ways. Emotional resistance is often a survival response. It's not a flaw, it's a strategy that once kept us safe. The ego fears change. It wants to protect the identity and control we've built. Root cause work challenges that, and that's okay. Naming and working with resistance gently is key. Awareness, curiosity, and compassion are essential tools for breaking through. Healing begins with emotional honesty. The truth might be uncomfortable, but it also sets us free. Reflective prompt. What part of yourself do you avoid facing and why? Take a moment to write freely. What emotion, truth, memory, or pattern do you resist sitting with? What fear is attached to it? What would it feel like to face it gently, without judgment? You don't need to have all the answers right now. Just begin with awareness. Awareness is the first doorway to freedom. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when we finally do look deeper, how problems become mirrors, and how the people and situations that trigger us can reveal powerful truths about our inner world. Because once we move past resistance, what we find isn't shame, it's insight. Are you ready to hold up the mirror? Let's turn the page. Chapter 4. The Mirror Effect. Problems as Teachers. What if every struggle was perfectly designed for your growth? At some point in life, we've all asked the question, why is this happening to me? It's a natural response to pain, especially when the same type of problem keeps showing up. Maybe it's betrayal. Maybe it's rejection. Maybe it's a recurring financial struggle, chronic overwhelm, or a toxic relationship pattern that feels too familiar. And it's so tempting to see these experiences as random misfortunes or worse, as proof that life is unfair. But what if those problems aren't random at all? What if every struggle you face is a reflection of something within you? Something asking to be seen, healed, reclaimed. What if your problems are not just obstacles to overcome, but mirrors placed in your path not to punish you, but to teach you? This chapter is about the uncomfortable, liberating, and transformative truth that life is always showing us something about who we are, what we believe, and how we're growing. The question is, are we willing to look? Life as a reflective surface. Have you ever noticed how two people can react completely differently to the same situation? One person might feel deeply offended by a critical comment, while another shrugs it off with ease. One might crumble under pressure, while another thrives in the same environment. What's the difference? It's not the situation, it's what the situation is activating inside each person. That activation, whether it's fear, shame, anger, or defensiveness, is a reflection of something deeper, something already living within us, waiting to be seen. Here's a hard truth that becomes a powerful tool when we stop resisting it. The external world often mirrors our internal state. That doesn't mean we're to blame for everything that happens to us. But it does mean that how we perceive, interpret, and respond to life is deeply shaped by our inner landscape. When we understand this, everything changes. Because instead of asking, why is this happening to me? We begin asking, what is this showing me about myself? That question is the doorway to growth. The mirror is not the enemy. When life hands us a painful situation, it's natural to point outward. We blame the partner who doesn't listen, the boss who micromanages, the friend who betrays us, or the opportunity that slipped away. And sometimes the external issue is very real. People do hurt each other. Systems are unfair. Life throws curveballs we didn't ask for. But still, within every situation, no matter how unjust or uncomfortable, there is an opportunity to look inward and ask, why did this trigger me the way it did? What boundary wasn't honored, and did I even set it? What fear did this bring to the surface? What belief did this situation confirm or challenge? The mirror isn't about blame. It's about self-awareness. It's not about fault. It's about reflection. Every conflict, every frustration, every disappointment has something to teach us if we're willing to look past the surface and into the mirror it's holding up. A personal story. The conflict that changed me. I once had a close friend, someone I trusted deeply, who suddenly began pulling away. At first, I brushed it off. They're probably just busy. But as time passed, the distance grew. Messages were left on read. Plans were cancelled. I began to feel dismissed, unimportant, even betrayed. The story I told myself was that they were being cold and selfish, that they didn't value the friendship, that they were taking me for granted. I stewed in that story for weeks until one night, after a particularly painful exchange, I sat down with my journal and asked myself a question I wasn't ready for. What is this situation showing me about myself? And as I wrote, a deeper truth began to rise. I realized that what was really being triggered wasn't just this friend's behavior. It was an old wound I hadn't acknowledged in years. The fear of being abandoned without explanation. That fear traced back to my childhood, where emotional inconsistency left me anxious and hyper-attuned to people's moods, always trying to be good enough to stay loved. This friend wasn't doing anything malicious. They were simply going through their own season of withdrawal and weren't communicating clearly. But my reaction? That was about me. About the unresolved fear that still lived in me. The moment I saw that, everything softened. I didn't excuse the behavior, but I no longer made it about my worth. I reached out with honesty, not blame. I shared how I was feeling, not as an accusation, but as an opening. And while the friendship didn't fully return to what it was, I returned to myself with deeper awareness, deeper healing, and a new layer of self-compassion. That's the gift of the mirror. The different kinds of mirrors. Not all mirrors are created equal. Some reflect our beliefs. Others reflect our boundaries. Some reflect our fears. And some reflect our potential. Here are a few ways life holds a mirror to who we are. 1. Emotional triggers. If something causes a reaction that feels bigger than the moment itself, it's likely reflecting something deeper. That reaction is the doorway in. Ask, what's the core emotion underneath this? When have I felt this way before? What fear or belief is being activated? 2. Repetitive problems. When the same kind of issue keeps showing up, especially in different areas or relationships, so it's often reflecting a belief or unhealed pattern. Ask, what do all these situations have in common? What story am I subconsciously living out? What lesson keeps coming back to me? 3. Difficult relationships. Challenging people can reveal your boundaries, your triggers, your unmet needs, or even the parts of you that you suppress. Ask, what do I feel around this person and why? Am I showing up authentically or performatively? What am I tolerating that doesn't align with my truth? 4. Unmet desires. Sometimes the mirror isn't painful, it's aspirational. We feel envy or longing not because we lack something, but because we've buried a part of ourselves that wants to be expressed. Ask, what does this person's situation awaken in me? What desire have I been ignoring? What would it look like to honor that part of me? Projection versus reflection. Here's where things can get tricky. When we're not ready to look into the mirror, we project instead. Projection is when we take our own fear, insecurity, or unresolved emotion and cast it onto someone else. For example, if I feel powerless, I might say, they're so controlling. If I struggle with confidence, I might say, they think they're better than me. If I have unspoken needs, I might say, they're so selfish, they never consider me, when the truth is, I never expressed what I needed. Projection protects the ego. It makes someone else the problem, so we don't have to feel the vulnerability of looking inward. But here's the thing. Projection robs us of our power, because as long as the problem is out there, we can't change anything in here. Reflection, on the other hand, requires humility. It means saying, this triggered me. I wonder why. This situation feels familiar. Where have I felt this before? Before I point the finger, what can I learn about myself here? Reflection doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it transforms how we respond to it. It turns chaos into clarity. It turns pain into purpose. Self-inquiry, turning the mirror inward. So how do we actually use problems as mirrors, instead of simply reacting to them? Here's a process you can practice anytime you find yourself facing something difficult. 1. Pause and feel. Don't rush to solve or analyze. Just feel. Sit with the emotion. Breathe into it. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Try to go beyond surface labels like angry or annoyed and dig deeper. Maybe it's rejection, fear, grief, shame, or loneliness. 2. Ask reflective questions. Here are a few powerful ones. What is this situation reflecting back to me about my beliefs, boundaries, or needs? When have I felt this way before? Is this reaction bigger than the situation? Why? What is this trying to teach me about myself? 3. Own what's yours and let go of what's not. Self-reflection doesn't mean self-blame. It means owning your internal response, not everything that happened. Example: they crossed a boundary, and I didn't speak up. I'm allowed to feel hurt. But I'm also responsible for communicating more clearly next time. 4. Act from insight, not emotion. Once you've reflected, you're in a much better position to respond with clarity, instead of reactivity. The mirror has done its job. Growth requires introspection, not projection. We live in a culture that often encourages us to focus outward. We're trained to evaluate, compare, and critique others. We scroll through highlight reels. We consume drama. We build stories about what everyone else is doing wrong. And in doing so, we sometimes lose the most powerful tool for personal growth: introspection. Real transformation begins when we stop asking, why are they like that? And start asking, why did I react this way? It begins when we take back our power, not by controlling the world, but by understanding ourselves within it. Projection is easy. It's reflexive. It's protective. But introspection? That's where freedom lives. Because the moment you realize your problems are showing you something about you, you become the author of your own evolution. When the mirror hurts. Let's be honest, reflection isn't always easy. It hurts to admit we're stuck in a pattern, to see our own fear, insecurity, or neediness. It's painful to realize we've accepted less than we deserve, stayed quiet when we needed to speak, or avoided change because comfort felt safer. That kind of honesty stings, but in a way that frees you. The pain of seeing clearly is temporary. The pain of staying unaware lasts far longer. Grieve if you need to. Forgive what you didn't know. And remember, the mirror doesn't show you what's wrong with you. It shows you where to begin again. And that's where healing starts. Chapter 5. Emotional resilience. Holding steady in the storm. You don't have to control the storm. You just have to learn how to stand in it. There are moments in life when the sky cracks open. A sudden loss. A sharp betrayal. A dream that collapses. A chapter that ends before you were ready. We often believe that strength means pushing through these moments with clenched fists and dry eyes. We think if we stay busy enough, positive enough, numb enough, we can get through without really feeling it. But that's not resilience. Resilience isn't about suppression. It's not about pretending everything's fine. It's not about moving on so quickly that we skip over the grief, the anger, the shock, the ache. Real resilience is the quiet, steady ability to stay with yourself through the storm. It's about feeling fully without being consumed. It's about staying grounded even when the ground beneath you shifts. It's about developing the capacity to hold your own heart in your hands, gently, when the world feels too heavy to carry. This chapter is a guide to building that kind of strength, not as a performance, but as a practice. Not as a demand, but as a devotion. The myth of the uncheckable. We're often sold a version of strength that looks like being untouched by pain. The successful executive who never cracks under pressure. The emotionally detached partner who doesn't get attached. The upbeat friend who never lets anything get to them. But let's be honest, that's not strength, it's armor. And armor, while useful in battle, gets heavy to carry. Over time, it cuts us off from the very things we need to heal. Connection, authenticity, softness, truth. Resilience isn't being unaffected by life. It's being deeply affected and still being able to come home to yourself. It's feeling the wave without drowning in it. It's letting emotion move through you instead of living in you forever. And like any skill, it can be learned. Emotional resilience starts with regulation. At the heart of emotional resilience is the ability to regulate our nervous system. When something painful happens, especially something sudden or overwhelming, our system goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mode. These responses aren't weaknesses. They're protective. They've evolved to keep us alive. But the modern threats we face are emotional more than physical. And if we're not aware of our response, we can become trapped in a loop of reactivity. The first step toward resilience is simply awareness. Can you recognize when you're triggered? Can you feel when your heart starts racing? Your thoughts speed up, your breath shortens. And once you notice, can you pause? That pause is everything. It's the space where reactivity transforms into response, where chaos becomes conscious, where the storm slows just long enough for you to find your footing. Self-soothing. The forgotten art. Most of us were never taught how to soothe ourselves emotionally. As children, we may have been told, "Stop crying," or "Don't be so sensitive." Maybe our feelings were minimized or ignored. Maybe we learned to rely on others for comfort or to deny our needs entirely. But as adults, emotional resilience often comes down to this. Can I sit with my pain without abandoning myself? Self-soothing doesn't mean denying your emotions. It means creating enough internal safety to hold them. Here are a few simple ways to begin practicing. 1. Breath work. Your breath is the remote control to your nervous system. Slow, deep breathing tells your body, you are safe. Try this in the moment. Inhale for a count of 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Repeat 3 to 5 times. 2. Grounding techniques. Come back to the present by engaging the senses. Name 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This brings your mind out of spiraling thoughts and into the now. 3. Soothing self-talk. Speak to yourself like you would to a child or a dear friend. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Repeat 3 to 5 times. 2. Grounding techniques. Come back to the present by engaging the senses. Name 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This brings your mind out of spiraling thoughts and into the now. 3. Soothing self-talk. Speak to yourself like you would to a child or a dear friend. This hurts, and it's okay to hurt. I'm here with you. You're not alone. We don't have to fix this right now. We're just going to breathe. Your nervous system listens to your inner voice. Let it be kind. You are not your emotions. You are their witness. When we experience intense emotion, it's easy to become merged with it. We don't say, "I'm feeling sadness." We say, "I am sad." We don't say, "I'm noticing anger." We say, "I am angry." That language matters. It shapes our perception. It fuses our identity with a temporary state. But here's the truth. You are not your emotions. You are the one witnessing them. You are the sky. Your emotions are the weather. Sometimes it's sunny, sometimes it storms, but the sky remains. This shift in perspective, seeing your emotions as experiences, not identities, is one of the most powerful practices in building resilience. You can learn to observe what's rising within you without judging it, repressing it, or being overtaken by it. You can say, "Sadness is visiting me right now. I'll let it sit beside me until it's ready to leave." That's presence. And presence is what keeps you grounded when the wind picks up. A personal story. Loss, stillness, and staying with the pain. Several years ago, I experienced the loss of someone I loved deeply. It wasn't sudden, but it was still devastating. I knew it was coming. I had braced myself, told myself to be strong. I even tried to plan for how I would move on. I thought preparation would protect me. But grief has a way of disregarding your schedule. When the moment came, I felt everything I thought I had fortified myself against. The ache, the emptiness, the weight in my chest. At first, I did what I knew how to do. I kept busy. I made lists. I responded to messages. I organized my pain into neat little tasks. But when the world finally quieted, the grief surged. And I had a choice: run again or stay. That night, I lay on the floor and let it wash over me. The tears came like a flood. My chest burned. My hands trembled. I didn't try to stop it. I just breathed. I whispered to myself, "You're safe. It's okay to feel this. I'm here." I didn't drown. In fact, something miraculous happened. Underneath the grief, I found something else. Presence. A sacred kind of stillness. A depth of love I had been too scared to fully feel. That moment taught me what resilience really is. It's not the absence of pain. It's the presence of you. Learn to pause before you react. So much suffering doesn't come from the initial pain, but from the reaction we have to it. Someone says something triggering, we lash out. We feel anxious, we isolate. We feel hurt, we self-sabotage. Resilience teaches us to pause, to create space between stimulus and response. That space is where we make conscious choices, instead of reactive ones. It's where we ask, what am I feeling? What's the story I'm telling myself? What do I actually need right now? What would a wise, compassionate response look like? This is a practice. You won't always get it right, but every time you choose presence over reaction, you're building your emotional muscle. And that muscle will serve you for a lifetime, when the storm doesn't pass right away. Sometimes, even when we do all the right things, pause, breathe, reflect, the pain remains. The storm lingers. That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. Resilience is not about getting over pain quickly. It's about learning to stay present with yourself while it moves through you. It's about riding the wave without needing it to end on your timeline. Over time, your capacity grows. What once overwhelmed you begins to feel tolerable. What once felt like drowning now feels like swimming in deep water, but with strength. Chapter summary. Key takeaways. Resilience is feeling without drowning. It's not avoiding pain. It's holding space for it. You are not your emotions. You are their witness, the sky, not the storm. Regulation starts with awareness. Pause, breathe, and return to your body. Self-soothing is a skill. You can learn to comfort yourself with care. Presence greater than reactivity. Your power lives in the pause. Pain may linger, but so can strength. You can stand in the storm with grace. Chapter 6. Radical responsibility. Taking ownership without shame. You're not to blame for everything, but you are responsible for how you respond. There's a moment in every healing journey when you come face to face with a tough, sobering truth. You're part of the pattern. It's not that you caused everything. It's not that you deserve everything that happened. But your reactions, choices, and avoidance may have played a role in keeping certain stories alive, especially the ones that keep hurting you. That realization stings. At first, because responsibility, when misunderstood, can feel like blame. And if we've been through trauma or emotional pain, the last thing we want is more shame. But here's the truth, and it's life-changing when you really feel it. Responsibility is not punishment. It's power. When you take ownership of your role, not in what happened to you, but in how you've responded, you begin to take your life back. You step out of victimhood. You reclaim your agency. You become the one who gets to write the next chapter, not the one who's forever trapped in the last. This is the heart of radical responsibility. Not blaming yourself for your pain, but choosing to own your healing. The line between blame and responsibility. Let's get one thing very clear up front. Blame says, it's your fault, and you should feel bad. Responsibility says, this is your life, and you get to decide how to meet it. Blame is heavy. It creates shame, paralysis, guilt. Responsibility is liberating. It creates clarity, choice, empowerment. The reason we often confuse the two is because we've been taught that if we're involved in a problem, we must be at fault. That if we made a mistake, we must be bad. That if we allowed something, we must be weak. But the truth is more nuanced. You can be a good person who has avoided a hard truth. You can be strong and still have patterns that sabotage you. You can be healing and still perpetuate cycles that hurt. And when you acknowledge that without shame, you open the door to transformation. You stop asking, whose fault is this? And start asking, what can I learn, shift, or own here? That shift is radical. And it's where everything begins to change. Victimhood versus agency. Victimhood is a very real state when harm has occurred. It's valid. It deserves care, recognition, and healing. But living in victim consciousness long after the original harm has passed keeps us stuck. It sounds like, this always happens to me. No one ever shows up for me. I can't change. That's just how I am. If they would just change, I'd be okay. It externalizes all power. It leaves your healing in someone else's hands. It creates a life where you react more than you choose. Radical responsibility doesn't deny the pain or injustice. It simply asks. But living in victim consciousness long after the original harm has passed keeps us stuck. It sounds like, this always happens to me. No one ever shows up for me. I can't change. That's just how I am. If they would just change, I'd be okay. It externalizes all power. It leaves your healing in someone else's hands. It creates a life where you react more than you choose. Radical responsibility doesn't deny the pain or injustice. It simply asks, now that I'm aware, what can I do with this? It shifts your identity from someone life happens to someone life flows through. And that shift is subtle but revolutionary. Personal story. The pattern I didn't want to see. A few years ago, I found myself in yet another creative project that collapsed halfway through. It was the third or fourth time in a row I'd committed to something, collaborated with someone dreamed big only to have it fall apart. I always felt like the victim. They flaked. They weren't committed. They changed their minds. That story worked for a while. It made me feel righteous. But eventually, after another abrupt ending, I had to sit down and ask, what's the common denominator here? The answer, quietly but clearly, was me. Not in a self-shaming way, but in a real, honest, uncomfortable way. When I looked deeper, I saw a pattern. I said yes to projects I wasn't fully aligned with. I didn't express my true needs up front. I overextended myself to keep things smooth. I avoided direct conversations when tension arose. I carried unspoken resentment and then felt blindsided when things unraveled. That wasn't malicious. It was human. But it was mine. And the moment I saw it, something inside me shifted. Not in a self-shaming way, but in a real, honest, uncomfortable way. When I looked deeper, I saw a pattern. I said yes to projects I wasn't fully aligned with. I didn't express my true needs up front. I overextended myself to keep things smooth. I avoided direct conversations when tension arose. I carried unspoken resentment and then felt blindsided when things unraveled. That wasn't malicious. It was human. But it was mine. And the moment I saw it, something inside me shifted. I stopped waiting for more reliable people. I became the reliable one to myself. I spoke up sooner. I listened better. I said no more clearly. I took responsibility, not just for the outcome, but for how I was showing up. And do you know what happened? Things started to stick. Not perfectly, not without challenge, but from a more solid, centered, honest place. That's the power of owning your part, not to shame yourself, but to set yourself free. Taking ownership without shame. So how do you do it? How do you step into radical responsibility without falling into guilt, blame, or self-punishment? 1. Get curious, not critical. When something goes wrong, don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "What's trying to show itself here?" Every repeated pattern is an invitation to look deeper. Approach it like a scientist, not a judge. You're observing, not sentencing. 2. Name the pattern, not the character. It's easy to internalize patterns as identity. I always mess things up. I'm bad with money. I can't be trusted in relationships. Stop. Those aren't identities. They're learned patterns, and patterns can be unlearned. Instead, say, I've noticed I avoid hard conversations when I feel insecure. I've developed a pattern of overspending when I feel empty. I tend to sabotage intimacy when I feel vulnerable. Naming the pattern, not attacking your character, keeps you in a space of growth. 3. Ask, what's my role in this cycle? This is where real empowerment begins. It's not about taking on more than your share. It's about owning your share. Examples. I kept giving second chances without clear boundaries. I never communicated my needs because I was afraid of being rejected. I ignored the red flags because I wanted to be chosen. These truths might sting, but they're also where your power lives. Because what you own, you can change. 4. Separate responsibility from worth. Just because you contributed to a dynamic doesn't mean you're bad. It means you're human. Flawed. Evolving. Taking responsibility doesn't lower your worth. It elevates your self-awareness. Say it out loud. I can own my part and still be worthy of love and respect. Let that truth land. Again and again. The freedom of accountability. Here's what people don't often tell you about responsibility. It's freeing. When you stop blaming others for your life, you stop waiting for them to change. You stop giving your peace away. You stop living in reaction. You start choosing. You start healing. You start creating. Accountability doesn't trap you. It releases you from old stories that have kept you small. It puts the pen back in your hand. What radical responsibility is not? Let's be clear about what this concept does not mean. It does not mean taking responsibility for other people's behavior. It does not mean blaming yourself for being hurt, manipulated, or abused. It does not mean suppressing your feelings to rise above. It does not mean doing all the emotional labor in a relationship. Radical responsibility is not about taking more than your share. It's about taking yours no more, no less, with clarity and integrity. And once you've done that, you can let go of the rest. When you own it, you can change it. There's a moment in every healing journey where you say, "This stops with me." Not because you're done hurting. Not because the world suddenly makes sense. But because you're ready to live from awareness, not old patterns. Because you're tired of your past deciding your future. Because you're choosing to step into the kind of self-leadership that builds a life aligned with your truth. That doesn't mean you won't fall. You will. But when you do, you'll know what to ask. What was my part? What can I do differently? What is life trying to teach me here? And in that reflection, growth is born. Chapter summary. Key takeaways. Taking responsibility is empowering, not punishing. It allows you to reclaim your role as the author of your life. Blame and shame keep you stuck. Responsibility invites growth. Victimhood externalizes power. Radical responsibility brings it home. Patterns are not character flaws. They are learned behaviors and they can be unlearned. Accountability fosters real change. The more you own, the more you can shift. You can take ownership and still be worthy. They are not mutually exclusive. Chapter 7. Letting go of the outcome. Detaching from control. Sometimes the solution isn't fixing, it's releasing. There's a quiet ache that comes from trying to hold everything together. You know the feeling. The late-night mental spirals, the endless planning, the tension in your chest from trying to control something that's already slipping through your fingers. We try to manage people's reactions. We try to predict the future. We try to force outcomes to match our expectations. And somewhere along the way, we confuse control with safety. We tell ourselves, if I can just get this right, everything will be okay. But what happens when you've done everything right, and it still falls apart? What happens when the person doesn't choose you? When the job doesn't come through? When the healing doesn't happen in the timeline you prayed for? In those moments, we're invited into one of life's most powerful and difficult lessons. Letting go is sometimes the most courageous thing we can do. This chapter is not about giving up. It's about surrendering to what is not because you don't care, but because trying to control what you can't only deepens your suffering. Letting go isn't weakness. It's wisdom. The illusion of control. We spend so much of our energy trying to control things that are inherently uncontrollable. Other people's feelings, the pace of our healing, the timing of opportunities, the outcomes of our choices, the future. And we do it with the best intentions. We want to feel secure, safe, prepared. We want to avoid disappointment, chaos, or regret. But the truth is, control is an illusion. One that gives temporary comfort but long-term tension. We can influence. We can prepare. We can respond wisely. But we cannot force life to obey our plans. The sooner we acknowledge this, the sooner we can stop resisting reality and start flowing with it. Surrender is not the same as giving up. A lot of people resist the idea of surrender because they think it means defeat or passivity. That's not what we're talking about here. Let's define the difference. Giving up is rooted in hopelessness. Surrender is rooted in clarity and trust. Surrender says, I've done my part. Now I release the rest. It's not resignation. It's recognition. It's knowing where your responsibility ends and where the unknown begins. It's releasing the outcome so you can return to presence. Because here's what control often steals from us: peace, creativity, intuition, and joy. When we grip too tightly, we lose connection to the moment we're actually living. Letting go doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we stop clinging. When fixing becomes a trap, there's a difference between healthy problem-solving and obsessive fixing. Healthy problem-solving comes from presence. You see what's happening. You assess. You act. You adapt. Obsession, on the other hand, comes from fear. It's trying to force certainty in an uncertain world. It's making your sense of peace conditional on everything going exactly the way you planned. That mindset sounds like, I'll be okay once this person understands me. I'll be at peace once I'm fully healed. I'll be happy when I reach that goal. The problem? When peace is conditional on an outcome, you're never truly free. Letting go means releasing the need for the outcome to look a certain way in order to feel okay. It's choosing to be grounded in the now, even if the future is still unfolding. A personal story. The outcome that almost broke me. A few years ago, I was working towards something that felt like a dream. It was a creative project I'd poured myself into heart, soul, time, and tears. I believed in it with everything I had. I visualized its success. I prayed over it. I did all the right things. And then, it fell apart. A partnership dissolved. The momentum stalled. The doors I thought would open stayed shut. I tried to revive it. I pivoted, adjusted, problem solved. But nothing worked. Still, I held on. Not because it was working, but because letting go felt like failure. It felt like betrayal. I was attached not just to the vision, but to what it meant about me if it didn't succeed. One day, sitting in the midst of yet another failed attempt to revive the project, I heard a quiet voice inside say, "You're trying to force what's not ready or not meant to be." And in that moment, something broke open. I cried not because I was weak, but because I was finally releasing something that no longer wanted to be held. I surrendered. I let it go not in bitterness, but in grace. Not because I didn't care, but because clinging to it was suffocating my spirit. And almost immediately, space opened. Within months, new opportunities arrived. Unexpected ideas flowed. Healing deepened. The things I thought I needed turned out to be the doorway to something better. But I couldn't see it until I let go. What letting go actually looks like. Letting go is not a one-time decision. It's a practice, a discipline, a kind of spiritual weight training. It looks like choosing not to recheck that message thread again, breathing through the discomfort of not knowing, catching yourself in a worry spiral and gently saying, "Not right now," releasing someone to their own journey, allowing yourself to rest without needing everything figured out. It's subtle, it's moment by moment, and it's deeply powerful. The signs you're holding too tightly. Here are some signs you may be gripping instead of flowing. You feel constantly anxious about how it's all going to work out. You overplan, overthink, or obsess over worst-case scenarios. You struggle to enjoy the present because you're focused on the future. You base your self-worth on a particular result. You find yourself emotionally drained from trying to fix everything. If any of these resonate, you're not alone. But ask yourself, what am I really afraid will happen if I stop holding so tightly? And what part of me is seeking safety through control? These are the places to bring gentleness, not judgment. Acceptance. The gateway to peace. Here's a quiet truth. Peace doesn't come from certainty. It comes from acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what's happening. It means you stop fighting what already is. It means saying, "This is what's here right now. I don't have to like it, but I don't have to resist it. I can meet this moment with presence." Acceptance allows you to make clearer choices, because when you stop arguing with reality, you gain energy to respond wisely. It's like standing in a river. Fighting the current drains you. Flowing with it allows you to navigate. Let go of the shore. Trust the water. Tools for practicing surrender. Letting go isn't something you do once. It's something you cultivate. Here are a few practices to support you. 1. Mantras and affirmations. Use grounding phrases when your mind starts clinging. I release what's not mine to carry. I trust the timing of my life. Peace is available to me right now. Repeat them out loud. Write them down. Anchor yourself in these truths. 2. Journaling. When you feel stuck in control mode, write it out. What am I trying to control? Why is this outcome so important to me? What fear would letting go confront? Often, just naming your fears softens their grip. 3. The what if it's okay? Practice. Ask yourself, what if things work out even if it's not in the way I expect? This reframes fear as possibility. It invites you to trust that not knowing doesn't mean not worthy. 4. Nature and stillness. Spend time in places that remind you the world is vast, cyclical, and out of your control. The ocean, the forest, the sky. Watch how everything blooms, decays, and renews without force. Let it teach you something. When letting go leads to grief, sometimes letting go hurts. We let go of someone we still love, a future we imagined, a version of ourselves we thought we'd be. It's okay to grieve what you're releasing. Grief is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're doing it honestly. Let yourself feel the sadness, the disappointment, the tenderness, and trust that on the other side of that grief is something softer, more spacious, more real. Chapter summary. Key takeaways. Not everything needs to be fixed. Some things are meant to be felt, accepted, or released. Control is an illusion. Influence what you can, but release what's out of your hands. Surrender is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the choice to stop clinging and start trusting. Peace is found in presence, not perfection. The moment you let go of needing the future to look a certain way, you return to your power. Letting go is a practice. It's built through trust, breath, and repeated moments of soft release. Chapter 8. Growth is not linear, evolving through setbacks. Progress is not a straight line, it's a spiral. You return to old lessons with new strength. There's a moment in every journey, especially the inner ones, when you think to yourself, I thought I was past this. You feel a familiar ache rise in your chest. A pattern you thought you'd broken suddenly reappears. An old trigger comes knocking with a fresh face. You slip into an old habit. You react in a way you swore you wouldn't. And for a moment, your heart sinks. Because you thought you'd healed this. You thought you were done with this story. You thought you'd finally moved on. But here it is again, right at your doorstep. And here's the part I want you to hear more than anything. This doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're human. Growth doesn't move in a straight, ascending line. It moves like the tides, like the moon, like breath, like seasons. It spirals. It circles, it deepens. You return to old lessons not because you're broken, but because you're stronger now. You're ready to meet them with a deeper wisdom, a gentler heart, a steadier self. This chapter is your reminder that healing doesn't have a finish line, and that's not a flaw. It's a feature. Growth is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming present, even when the path loops back around. The lie of linear progress. Our culture loves the idea of linear growth. We're told that if we do the work, we'll get better, stronger, more healed. And that once we reach a certain point, the old stuff will just vanish. But real healing isn't neat. It's not a checklist. It's not a staircase you climb and never descend. It looks more like this. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Big leaps followed by long pauses. Moments of clarity followed by moments of confusion. Bursts of light followed by shadows you thought were gone. This is not regression. This is reality. Each time you revisit a lesson, you're not in the same place you were before. You have new tools, more awareness, a stronger sense of self. You're not going back, you're going deeper. The spiral of growth. Imagine growth not as a line, but as a spiral staircase. You circle around the same themes: trust, fear, love, worthiness, but each time from a new elevation. You may still struggle with boundaries, but now you speak up sooner. You may still feel anxious, but now you recognize it more quickly. You may still grieve, but now you let yourself feel without shame. This spiral isn't a sign you're stuck. It's a sign you're growing from the inside out. Each loop teaches you something new. Each return invites you to see the old story with new eyes. And yes, sometimes the lesson is humbling, but it's also refining. You are not who you were the last time this wound was touched. A personal story, meeting an old wound with new strength. Years ago, I went through a heartbreak that shook the ground under me. It wasn't just about the relationship ending, it was about what it represented. I had wrapped so much of my identity, safety, and hope into that connection that when it ended, it felt like I'd lost part of myself. I did what many of us do. I cried. I processed. I wrote. I worked on myself. And eventually, I reached a place of genuine healing. Years passed. I grew in confidence. I built a life I loved. I even started helping others navigate heartbreak. Then unexpectedly, I met someone who stirred something familiar in me. There was chemistry, connection, hope. And just like before, I found myself slowly, subtly attaching my sense of self-worth to how they responded to me. The old anxiety returned. Am I enough? Do they see me? Am I too much? I felt defeated, embarrassed. I thought I was done with this, I whispered through tears one night. But then I paused. I looked at what was different. This time, I noticed it. This time, I didn't abandon myself. This time, I reached out for support before I collapsed. This time, I set boundaries. I communicated. I stayed rooted. Was the pattern still there? Yes, but I wasn't the same. And that realization that I could meet the old wound with new strength brought a wave of healing I never expected. That's the spiral. That's the work. That's growth. Normalizing the return. Let's normalize what healing actually looks like. Feeling confident for months, and then suddenly second-guessing yourself. Setting a boundary, and then feeling guilty about it. Letting go of someone, and then missing them deeply again. Rewriting a belief, and then having it tested the very next day. None of this means you're back at square one. It means you're living, growing, practicing. The goal is not to eliminate every emotional reaction. It's to recover with more grace and consciousness when it arises. You will fall. You will forget. You will falter. But now you return faster. You remember sooner. You rebuild stronger. That's progress. Progress over perfection. We often measure growth in absolutes. I no longer feel anxious. I never cry about that anymore. I'm totally over it. But those are perfection-based metrics and they're unrealistic. Real growth looks like, I still get anxious, but I don't shame myself for it. I cried today and I let it be okay. I thought of them, and I didn't spiral. I still miss what I lost, but I no longer lose myself in the missing. These are massive wins, quiet wins, but deeply meaningful. Celebrate them. When setbacks come, here's what to do when you find yourself back in the familiar ache of an old wound. 1. Pause the self-criticism. Don't rush to fix it. Don't judge yourself. Don't make it mean you failed. Instead say, I see that this is here again. That's okay. Sometimes that's all your heart needs. 2. Look for the lesson, but gently. Ask, what is this showing me now that I couldn't see before? What part of me is still healing? How can I support myself through this? Don't force insight. Let it arise naturally. 3. Honor the progress you've made. Ask, how did I handle this differently than I would have a year ago? What tools am I using now that I didn't have back then? What's more true for me now than it was before? This reflection will show you how far you've come. 4. Trust the process. Remember, you're not starting over. You're moving through a deeper layer. Healing has seasons. Let this one unfold without rushing. Compassion, your greatest ally. If you take nothing else from this chapter, let it be this. Be kind to yourself when you revisit your old wounds. Speak gently. Sit quietly. Soften your grip. Tell yourself, I'm not broken. I'm becoming. Because that's what healing is, not fixing what's wrong, but returning to what's true. And that return, again and again, is what makes you whole. Chapter summary. Key takeaways. Healing is not a straight path. It moves in spirals, cycles, and seasons. Old problems can have new layers. Revisiting a wound doesn't mean failure, it means growth is deepening. You are not the same person you were last time. Trust that you've evolved, even if the feelings are familiar. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Look for the subtle shifts, the softened reactions, the quicker returns to center. Compassion is your anchor. Speak to yourself with tenderness when the spiral brings you back around. Chapter 9. The powerful approach. A new way to live. When you see problems as pathways, life becomes a conversation, not a confrontation. We often think of life's difficulties as interruptions, as if we were on the right path. And then the problem showed up to pull us off track. But what if the problem was the path? What if every struggle was less of a detour and more of a doorway? A portal not to perfection but to presence, depth, and truth. What if you started to see each moment of confusion, resistance, or discomfort not as a failure, but as an opportunity to return to yourself? What if your problems were speaking to you not to hurt you, but to wake you up? That shift in perspective changes everything. It's the difference between living defensively and living deliberately, between reacting to life and relating to it. Because when you start to see problems not as threats, but as invitations, life becomes something else entirely. It becomes a conversation. One where you listen to yourself. One where you respond instead of control. One where growth is not a destination, but a daily practice of showing up, honestly and fully, at the root. That's what the powerful approach is. It's not a set of rigid rules or idealized habits. It's a way of being, a way of facing problems with presence, compassion, clarity, and courage. And it begins the moment you stop running from your life and start standing inside it. Why this isn't a fix? Let's start by saying what this approach is not. It's not about perfect self-awareness. It's not about having it all figured out. It's not about becoming above pain or immune to problems. You will still feel. You will still fall. You will still fumble. But instead of collapsing in those moments, you'll meet them. With tools, with insight, with grounded, lived wisdom. Because what you've built across these chapters is not a checklist. It's a compass. One that guides you inward, toward your root, every time life invites you to grow. The core philosophy. Problems as portals. The most powerful shift you can make in your life is this. Stop treating problems like enemies. Start treating them like mirrors, messengers, and mentors. Because each time something triggers you, challenges you, or breaks you open, it's revealing something about what you value, what you believe, what you avoid, what you're being asked to face, who you're becoming. Your job isn't to fix every problem immediately. It's to learn from it, to listen to it, to let it shape you not into someone better, but into someone truer. The 5-part powerful approach. Let's bring this book home with a framework simple, flexible, and deeply human. Use this process whenever you feel stuck, triggered, overwhelmed, or uncertain. It works for emotional challenges, relational conflicts, life transitions, and even day-to-day stress. Here it is. 1. Pause. You don't have to react right now. You get to breathe first. Before you speak, solve, analyze, or spiral, pause. This moment of stillness creates space. It softens the nervous system. It reminds you that you are not your reaction. Take a breath. Step away if you need to. Reconnect to your body. Ask, what's actually happening inside me right now? 2. Reflect. What is this really about? Look beneath the surface. Ask, what am I feeling? What story am I telling myself? Have I felt this before? Is this a recurring pattern? Trace the emotion, not just the event. This is where you begin to see the root. 3. Trace the root. Where did this begin? Ask yourself the deeper whys. Maybe 5 of them. Maybe more. This is the heart of the work. It's where you uncover limiting beliefs, childhood wounds, unmet needs, survival strategies. Don't rush. Don't judge. Just stay curious. The root holds the key to lasting change. 4. Face with compassion. This isn't about blame. It's about belonging to yourself. Meet whatever you find at the root with care. Maybe it's a wounded younger self. Maybe it's a fear of rejection. Maybe it's a belief that you're not enough. Whatever it is, don't try to fix it right away. Hold it. Witness it. Speak to it kindly. Say, I see you. You're safe now. We're doing this differently. Self-compassion is not soft, it's revolutionary. A personal story. The problem that became peace. Not long ago, I found myself in a difficult situation with someone I deeply cared about. A misunderstanding had grown into distance, and I felt hurt, unseen, and angry. My old pattern would have been to withdraw, to stew in silence, to wait for them to figure it out or fix it. But this time, I practiced the approach. I paused. I felt the anger but didn't act on it. I reflected. This isn't just about them. It's about my fear of not mattering. I traced the root. That fear comes from early wounds moments when emotional absence left me questioning my worth. I met that old fear with compassion. I reminded myself, you do matter. Their distance doesn't define your value. Then, I responded with courage. I reached out, not with blame, but with truth. I shared how I felt, without demand. I held my boundary and my heart. And do you know what happened? We had one of the most honest conversations of our connection. No, it didn't fix everything instantly, but it cleared the air. It deepened trust. And most of all, it gave me peace. That's the power of this approach. It won't make your life perfect, but it will make you present. And that's where the real transformation lives. This is the way forward. So here you are, at the end of this book, but not the end of the journey. You've explored your resistance, your roots, your resilience, your responsibilities. You've learned to let go, to spiral with strength, to reframe your pain, and to listen for meaning. And now, you carry a new way of living. One that isn't about controlling life, but meeting it. One that isn't about avoiding pain, but transforming it. One that sees problems not as enemies, but as invitations to evolve. You've stepped into the role of participant, not just survivor. And you've discovered what many never do. The root is not the place you go to hide your pain. It's the place you go to remember your power. Chapter summary, key takeaways. Pause. Reflect. Trace the root. When problems arise, slow down and look beneath the surface. Face yourself with compassion. Healing comes through kindness, not judgment. Respond with courage, not control. Choose grounded, intentional action aligned with your values, not your fear. Growth begins at the root. The deeper you go, the stronger you grow. Conclusion: the journey forward. So here you are. You've read the words. You've sat with the questions. You've looked inward. Maybe you've cried. Maybe you've felt seen. Maybe you've recognized patterns you've carried for years, or made peace with truths you've been avoiding. Whatever this journey stirred in you, I want you to know something deeply, sincerely. You've done something powerful. Not because you've solved every problem, not because you've perfected yourself, but because you've chosen to slow down and face what most people spend their lives running from. You've chosen honesty over avoidance, reflection over reaction, compassion over control. That is not small work. That is life-changing work. And this journey, this book, is not the end. It's the beginning of a new way to live. A way of moving through life that is rooted, intentional, and real. A way that honors your growth, your wholeness, and your truth. You've learned not just how to fix problems, but how to grow through them. To see them as reflections, as teachers, as invitations into deeper alignment with who you really are. And as you step forward into whatever life brings next, this chapter is here to remind you. You are not going backward. You are equipped. You are empowered. You are evolving. Return to the root. One of the greatest things you can do for yourself moving forward is to return to the process you've practiced here, again and again. Because life won't stop presenting you with challenges. Triggers will still arise. Patterns may still reappear. You will still forget what you know sometimes. That's not failure. That's being human. But now you have a way through. You have a framework for pausing, reflecting, tracing the root, and responding with compassion and courage. You've learned that you don't have to have all the answers in the moment. You just have to be willing to stay present. And presence is powerful. So when the next storm comes, and it will remember, pause, come home to your breath. Create space between stimulus and response. Reflect. Notice what's rising. What story you're telling. What pattern might be playing out. Trace the root. Ask deeper questions. Be brave enough to go beneath the surface. Face with compassion. You're not here to shame yourself. You're here to understand yourself. Respond with courage. Not from fear, but from truth. Not from habit, but from wisdom. This isn't a checklist to complete, it's a practice to return to. A way to stay in relationship with your life. A way to grow, gently and bravely, from the inside out. You are the soil and the seed. One of the metaphors that has carried through this book is the idea of the root. That true transformation doesn't happen on the surface. It happens below, in the quiet places, in the unseen shifts. And here's the thing about roots. They're slow. They're quiet. But they're also incredibly strong. You don't always see growth right away. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. Some of your most powerful transformation will happen underground, out of view. Under pressure. Over time. Trust that. Keep tending to the root. Water it with presence. Nourish it with truth. Let the storms shake the soil if they need to. Because the seed of who you are becoming can handle it. You are the soil, the seed, and the sunlight. Progress isn't perfection. If you ever find yourself wondering, shouldn't I be further by now? Pause, breathe, and remember, you are not behind. You are becoming. Healing, growth, and self-awareness don't follow a linear timeline. They spiral. They deepen. They unfold layer by layer. Sometimes you'll revisit the same issue more than once, and that's okay. What matters isn't whether the issue comes back. What matters is how you meet it this time. Are you more honest? More grounded? More compassionate? That's progress. It's not about never feeling lost. It's about remembering how to find your way back. Give yourself permission to be in process. You are not a project to be fixed. You are a person to be felt, held, and lived from. There will be days when you feel steady, and days when you don't. There will be moments of clarity, and moments of confusion. There will be times when everything clicks and times when everything feels like it's coming undone. But through it all, you are allowed to be in process. You are allowed to not know. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to grieve what you've outgrown. You are allowed to grow slowly. This isn't a race. It's a return to the self beneath the stories. The self that has always been there, whole, wise, and waiting. Let your life be the practice. The greatest integration of this book isn't just in how you journal or reflect. It's in how you pause in the middle of a difficult conversation. Speak a truth you once would have swallowed. Respond to fear with breath instead of blame. Choose rest over perfection. Release control and soften into trust. Look at a problem and ask, what is this here to teach me? Let your life become the classroom. Let every interaction become a mirror. Let every struggle become a portal. Let every moment of awareness be a small act of liberation. You don't have to get it perfect. You just have to stay present. You are not alone. Whatever you face next, please remember, you are not alone. Others are walking this path too, learning to trace their roots, learning to live with more intention, learning to speak more honestly, love more deeply, and show up with more presence. And when you share your story, when you live from the lessons you've learned, you make it easier for someone else to do the same. Your healing ripples outward. So thank you for reading, for showing up, for doing this work. The world needs more people like you, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And realness creates space for connection, change, and hope. The journey is yours now. This book may be ending, but your journey is alive and unfolding. Let the tools you've gathered here live in your pocket. Let the questions guide you gently back to yourself. Let your roots run deep, so that when the winds of life come, and they will, you bend, but do not break. You are ready. You've always been. And now, you know how to return. So the next time life presents you with a challenge, pause. Feel your feet on the ground. And remember, you've been here before, but now you meet the moment with truth. You meet it with grace. You meet it from the root. Welcome to your powerful approach.